family radio stations during the evenings on weekdays. And Steve writes a column once or twice a week having to do with current events or political, social issues. He has speaks, and he is joining us right now from, speaking of the Heartland, joining us from Iowa. Steve, how you doing?
I'm well, Tim. How are you guys?
Doing good. Steve, you got a lot going on, man. What did I not cover right there?
Well, I am a contributor for USA Today, for Politico, Business Insider, and now CNS News, and I've also done some writing for Breitbart and the Washington Times, in addition to and WorldNet Daily, in addition to the show we do each night from 3 hours, from 9 to midnight Eastern Time.
So, Steve, on your website, went to look a little information, a little more about you. It says Steve Deace barely made it out of community college in one piece and then loosely attended a real college for a while. So your message to the young people of America is drop out of school and you can still be a big success. Is that?
In fact, I believe in that so much. My wife and I are personally educating our children ourselves just so they don't become like us.
There you go.
Like us.
There you go.
Well, why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do, Steve?
Why do I do what I do, and I do it the way that I do it because I lived a life. I lived a pagan life. I was born to a mom who was 14 years old when she got pregnant with me, had me when she was 15. And I've lived with a single mom, a teenage mom. We literally grew up together. I lived with a very physically, emotionally, verbally abusive stepfather. I know what substance abuse and sexual immorality, I know what they do, and my wife knows this from the way that she grew up as well. We know what those things do to people, the generational cycle of the vicious cycle that it can create, and how those things can be passed on to the next generation. And then after God saved me, I everything came into focus, an understanding of why we are the way we are, why the world is the way it is, and what can be done about it. I fancy myself an intellectual growing up. I have literally tried every single worldview that is known, and ism that is known. Maybe I don't think I tried Zoroastrianism, but I pretty much tried everything else on this planet. And the only explanation for why we are the way we are, the world is the way it is, and what can be done about it, the only thing that doesn't just provide the big answers to life's questions, but solutions as well, is a Christian biblical worldview. And so I just have a passion to see the people around me, the people I know in my family, my community, and my culture, and my country, and the sphere of influence God has put me in. I just have a passion for people to experience the redemption and freedom that God has given me.
So this is all joking aside, this is not a job for you. This is a passion. You use the word passion. Mm-hmm. You want to see people set free spiritually, politically, ideologically. You want people to be free, and so your passion drives you, frankly, to have a very busy schedule. It's admirable that you have the energy to do all these things, but this is a passion for you.
It is a passion, and it really filters in to everything that I do. And I want to, by God's grace, I recognize, some people have certain talents. Some people can tear down an engine block with their bare hands. I can't change my own oil. I had to learn how to shoot jump shots in high school if I wanted to play on the basketball team, because I wasn't going to jump over anybody. I mean, some people are just given natural gifts that they can't explain. And God gave me a natural gift to communicate with people. And it's really my one true natural talent. And I want to use that talent because I want to see if it's possible to make a biblical worldview a mainstream ideological entity in America again, where we're not relegated to the back shelves of the bookstore, or we are relegated to the end of the spectrum when it comes to what goes on in America, in the way that we discuss the issues. And nowadays you see that when something serious happens, the one institution that is almost never called upon to come into the arena of ideas and provide its perspective is the church. And I want to see if it's possible in my own little world with the ability and the openings God has given me to see if we can use that talent to make people consider a biblical worldview when maybe in the past they used as an excuse, oh, you guys know what you're talking about, you're not reasoned, you're not rational, you're boring, yada, 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 and to see if we can overcome all of those objections so that they have to look objectively at what God has to say.
And how you doing there with that?
Well, so far the lights are still on. I just left my house and the lights are still on. Mortgage is paid, so my wife doesn't have to go back to work. So far it's doing all right.
Talking to Steve Deace. Steve, I want to ask you, by the way, what's your, where can people go to read your stuff?
Probably the easiest thing to do is just go to our website at stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Or you can follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show.
Where does the realm of politics fit in with your priority list? Because, you know, you do write on it quite a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious. You know, we have people inside our brothers and sisters, if
Right.
you will, some of them who say, hey, you guys talk about politics. You know, we need to be talking about the gospel, you know, and we don't need to be involved in that government political
It's all going to burn.
stuff. It's all temporary anyway. So I just think y'all are wasting your time, or you're pulling people away from what they need to be doing, Christians, and focusing on all this worldly stuff. How would you respond to that?
To me, I respond to that in that I am overtly biblical in how I confront or engage the political system. And what I mean by that is, you know, if somebody at the office has the sniffles, I don't look at them and say, by his stripes you are healed. I hand them a Kleenex and tell them, God bless you, when they sneeze. I mean, I will speak in a way that the average person can understand, but the methodology that I speak with may sound contemporary, but the ideology I speak with is explicitly biblical, because I do agree that there is some tension between anything that we do to take away or to distract us from the gospel. You guys are going to talk to Ray Comfort later today. I've had him on my show many times, and I air on we air our show for 3 hours a day on a general talk station in New York City, and I've had him on explicitly talking about evangelism, to use this show as an opportunity, even though in many cases it's on general talk shows, to discuss the nature of the gospel itself. To me, though, I see that if we use this explicitly with the gospel in mind, then this doesn't just become about lobbying for public policy. It becomes about something far bigger. And that is now where we are now a witness to absolute truth, where we are using a worldly system the same way Paul used a worldly system when he was on trial in the New Testament. He used his Roman citizenship to provide him trials and a platform to express the gospel. And God has given us, through his providence, we live in a society that is still relatively free, and that gives us the opportunity to witness to God's truth, God's law, through that system. The challenge I would have for those who are taking more of almost an Anabaptist position on this is, explain to me how you're going to possibly evangelize a culture, and you know, the Great Commission's more than evangelism. It's the discipleship process. How are we going to disciple the nations if we reject or neglect the most important system within that particular nation or culture to begin with? I don't understand how you feel like you can just neglect the elephant in the room, no pun intended, or the donkey if you prefer, how you can reject the elephant or the donkey in the room, neglect that, and still think that you're going to have a tremendous say in what goes on in a culture at large. I mean, that is the city gate. Like when you read in the book of Ruth, when Boaz meets with her kinsman redeemer to try to obtain basically the right to marry her, where do they meet? Where is the business conducted? At the city gate. You know, when you went to see Moses at the tabernacle, he sat on a judgment seat. You went and saw him there. That was where the civic arena was taken care of in a particular culture. And the same thing is true here in the way that we conduct our affairs, in that our city gate is our political system. And this does provide us an opportunity that I think, frankly, isn't just an opportunity, gentlemen. I think it's an obligation. I think we have an obligation to preach and apply the gospel to all of human life.
Steve Deace with us. I'm Tim Wildman with Ed Battagliano. You're listening to the radio program Today's Issues on American Family Radio. I agree with you, Steve. I guess what gets me is I hear some of our fellow brothers and sisters, even some leading pastors sometimes, and they want to talk condescending about those of us who are interested in politics and government, as if we're not pious like they are. We're not spiritual or holy. They are. We're dealing with
worldly,
or we're worldly, and we shouldn't be involved in this. And I'm saying to myself, listen, brother, you better be glad there are a lot of good Christians involved in this, or you wouldn't have the right to be
right.
talking on this issue or to be preaching freely,
including our founding fathers. Who set up a system where you.
So this may not be your cup of tea, but don't go criticizing those your brothers and sisters who are trying to be salt and light in this process. And I like your analogy there, Steve, of the city gates, and our at least in America, we have the freedom to participate in the process, unlike many places around the globe, and unlike anything ever in history. We have a right to participate in the process, to run for office, to elect, to give our time and money to those we want to see elected who represent our ideas. And I'm telling you, if I talk to some of these guys and I say, listen, so you're saying Christians shouldn't be involved in politics? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, so laws everybody has to obey, right? Yes, laws everybody has to obey, and politics is a waste of time. I say, okay, so let me get this right. Laws that everybody have to obey, including you want made by purely godless people. Because the rest of it shouldn't be, because Christians shouldn't be wasting their time in the lawmaking process. Have I got you right there? So Steve, go ahead, brother. Take off on that one.
Well, I think you're right on the money. Now, one of the things we try to coach our audience with is what I call three-dimensional thinking.
Okay.
And that first dimension is know why you believe what you believe. And that's a command that Peter gives us, right? And in one of his epistles. And the Greek word there that he uses is apologia, where we get the word apologetics from. Okay, so we are commanded to, as Christians, be able to defend our belief system. But then the second dimension is, why do other people believe what they believe? What are they bringing to the table? And then the third dimension, though, is to understand why other people believe what they believe about what we believe. And when I often hear pastors say some of the things that you are describing they have said to people like you and I, there's usually, in that third dimension, when you find out why they're coming to the table with that, there's usually one of two reasons for it. The first is something it's beyond our jurisdiction, and that's really between them and the Holy Spirit. The first is, frankly, a level of gutlessness. I can't put it really any much nicer than that, because that's really what we're talking about, an excuse not to address the real dark areas of sin and what it does to people's lives. But then there's a second area that I do think, guys, so that we don't become self-righteous on our side of this, as equally self-righteous, frankly, as they are in their false piety. They do have one legitimate point that we need to always consider when engaging an arena, particularly one that is as flawed and compromised as the arena of politics is. And that is that we have to make sure we are not sullying the gospel. We're not watering it down. We're not making the gospel simply a means to an end for public policy, but that it is the means and the end unto itself, all in one. And we need to make sure we're not syncretistically linking pagan things or pagan systems with the gospel. And that's a challenge always when you are invading any aspect of the culture. That's a challenge for a pastor that wants to, reach people that are at a pub getting drunk in his neighborhood. How do I do that without getting so much of that dirt underneath my fingernails? I become just like them. Or there's a church in Las Vegas called Triple X Church that its pure specialty is to try to deliver people out of the porn industry. And I'm sure they're often faced as pastors and elders with, how do we engage that industry without getting so much of it on us that we become just like them? And that is a great challenge for Christians in any particular mission field. And I would just say to those pastors that rightfully are concerned that guys in our position may make that mistake, I would say to them, frankly, that's why we need you involved. That's why we need you involved. That's why this idea that we are separate here, separate entities, when really we are complementarians here. We need the church as an institution to proclaim the gospel and to proclaim the righteousness. And then folks have individual callings that God has granted them and opportunities to take that righteousness and that gospel into their individual callings. What we need is not for the church to write us off. If they're concerned that we may do this in a way that sullies the gospel, that actually is an argument for their participation